Hey, guys, it is Alison. I am the host of your show, Alison Answers Mission Awake. I cannot wait to sit down with you today and go over how we are going to crush the mediocrity in your life that has been plaguing our society since the beginning of time. I cannot wait to have a real deal conversation that includes intelligence, fun, excitement, and real actionable steps to make a real difference in the life that you're living now and making it into something you can be damn proud of and excited to live. Sit down, put on your damn seatbelt, and get ready for the ride of your life. Hey, guys, how are you today? I have another amazing guest on my show. And Brian, you're going to have to wait a couple of minutes because I have a few things to say about you. So I'm just going to ask you guys who are listening, everybody who's listening in right now, I want you to listen with a different perspective, because I know that a lot of times we can listen with comparing our insides to someone else's outsides. It's a very, very common thing. I know that I do it. So when I see someone who has a wealth of greatness, I can tend to disqualify myself. So I'm as a precursor, I'm asking you to consider what I'm saying and to consider that when you listen to Brian, and this is Brian Covey, but what I want to say to you is that by listening, you're going to experience a wealth of wisdom, transformation, of insight. And just by being here and listening, you're not going to be able to unhear it. But if you apply the things that Brian just mentions, because it's natural for him, he just mentions stuff that will change you. If you apply these things, it's kind of like the 4-minute mile. That's how I'd like you to look at him and look at this experience that we're going to have today together, because what will happen is if you apply this over time, you will see success start to materialize, and it doesn't happen overnight. So with all of that being said, I'm kind of doing a weird disclaimer about how great he is, because I'm going to dig for what's wrong with him so you can see how someone has overcome and created a life that's incredible. So I'm going to shout out about all these wonderful things about him now. So he's a soccer pro, soccer dad, family man, wealth advisor, speaker, author. He has a top-rated podcast. He is, which we're going to ask him about, a creative disruptor, which that's going to be my first question. So you get prepared over there. He's an executive at one of the top 5 lending places. What do you call that? It's called the Loan Depot, but it's one of the top in the country, top 5 in the country. He's a vice president of a mortgage company. Is that true?
It is true.
And I'm not done. He was a Olympic USA soccer player. He's a master at fitness. He's a master at mindset. He's a leader in his thing, it said 200 people. I don't know if it's more now, but I'm sure it is. How many?
Yeah, about 250. Who's counting? Yeah.
But who's counting? But the thing about Brian is that I want you to really take notes, because when I was listening to Brian, I was stalking him prior to this interview, and I won't unhear the things he says. And he's very, very aligned with helping people to stop reacting to life and create the life they want. And that is our whole mission here. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So could you explain to us, Brian, what a creative disruptor is?
Oh, so this goes back to when I was growing up. I decided I would pick up the guitar. I wasn't very good at it, but if you can imagine, I walk into a music store and I tell my parents I want to play guitar and all this. Well, the bass found me. So I ended up playing bass guitar because nobody in the band, our friends, you can imagine around 10, 11 years old, nobody wants to play bass because drums are cool, guitar is cool. You got people that play piano. They're like, hey, Covey, you got to go, we need a bass player. So I pick up bass, and I think that's where my creativeness started, was because in music, you're learning how to read music, you're playing music, you're listening and doing all that. And I started to draw some, and I'll never forget, even through high school, one of my favorite teachers was our art teacher, right? And she would always teach us just how to draw and express ourselves. And I actually took that into sports later, which is a completely different conversation. But I think players and athletes are creative. If you watch how they play, they're stylistic, how they show up, what they wear, how they warm up, just their mannerisms. That's creativity coming out through the form of sports. And so I turned it into that, and even now into business. And so creative disruptor to me is taking all that creativity that you have, whether it's a little bit or a lot. I know people, I live in Nashville, people are far more creative than I am, right? Like some of the most creatives ever. But I took that and said, well, what if I got creative about how I approach problems, how I attract the right people to our team, how we actually go out to the market and attract customers and service them and find needs that we can help. You start to get creative, and that allows you to disrupt the market. So that's how those two words came together. Was I think a lot of companies are set in their old ways. A lot of people are set in old ways and old beliefs, and they won't allow themselves to experience something new because they're so, in a way, our ego gets in the way of holding on to what we've been told as truth. And we don't allow ourselves to wonder and be curious about what's if. So a creative disruptor today shows up, you use all your God-given talents, gifts, everything you've been given in your life through experience, and you go out and disrupt the world in a positive way and show people how a simple smile, a simple thank you, a simple compliment, like you can disrupt the patterns that people are used to. So that, to me, that's a creative disruptor.
I love that. That is just incredible. And, you know, when I think about, I researched so many different things about you, and you know, some of the things that I saw that you overcame, just even in sports when you were a younger kid, you were describing just, you know, and I'm going to let you talk about it, but basically what are the things that you've overcome that then, because I hear how you've taken each experience of your life, any difficulty, and you've created something great for yourself and others. So what would you say to someone who's in a darker place, or someone who is, you know, being made fun of or overweight or something like that?
One, I can relate to you, and I'll tell you a little story. I remember it like it was the other day. Is a lot of people you see that are fit today, or highly intelligent in one area, or they've gained skills in an area, or they're passionate about something. It usually is birthed out of some pain, right? And I remember back, like I would have to wear 2 shirts. I remember being 12, 13 years old, like that middle school awkwardness already, you know, going through puberty and stuff, and you don't know. And I'd wear 2 shirts because I was so overweight and heavy that I just wasn't comfortable, right? So imagine being, on one hand, this really good athlete, but on the other hand, like I knew I was overweight, and I knew that like I would eat foods and all this stuff, and I wasn't really sure, like why do I not look like them? Or, you know, the comparison comes in at an early age, right? So this is middle school. I'll never forget the breakthrough for me was actually, I played basketball, like AAU travel basketball and all that. And my pediatrician, our doctor, happened to also be the basketball coach that traveled. Amazing. Dr. Snyder. I'll never forget. And I go in for one of my checkups, tells me how horrible my cholesterol is, how my blood pressure is through the roof. And we have high blood pressure in our family, and starts to go through all these things. He's like, this is where you're headed if you don't make a change. And he's like, this might be hard for you to hear, but you got to do something. And I had been called pizza boy, fat, you know, overweight, all this stuff. And the reality is, like, you've got choices. And I look back and go, I could have decided in that moment, that's just going to be who I am. Like, I'm just going to be that kid. Could have quit. I'm sure those thoughts went through my head of like, well, I'll just quit. Like, I don't want to go do the work. And I think for all of us, we're given an opportunity. Someone will say something, and while you might be offended and it might hurt, they want what's best for you. The only reason that Dr. Snyder shared that with me is because probably my parents were too close and didn't want to hurt their boy, right? Like, that's reality. But he was, I'd say, he had enough courage, right? He was courageous enough to say, man, I'm going to help this guy out before it gets worse. And so fast forward, what I decided to do, and this is kind of like how I've decided to approach life. And I can look back on this now. In the moment, I don't know that I knew all this. I actually don't think I did. And I said, okay, cool. Well, I'm going to start eating turkey. I started researching what's the healthy foods to eat. I was eating chicken. I was eating all these vegetables. I basically threw my whole family, my older brother and my parents, into this new world of we're getting fit. Okay. I'm not going to be the pizza boy and all these things they say. And I was waking up at 5 a.m. and I was running 3, 4, 5 miles before school. And I took action towards who I wanted to be versus going, well, it's just always going to be this way. There's nothing I can do. Let's be real. Those miles sucked. When you can't run a mile straight through, it's hard and you want to quit. And I'm sure there were times that I look back on, I'm like, man, what am I going to do? But I had that goal. I had that goal of, I was close to 190 pounds, and I'll never forget, I dropped down to 145 pounds, like the extreme of it. And imagine going through that as like 8th, 9th grader and realizing,
incredible.
Yeah. And so I look back, that was the biggest one for me, which by the way, then was a catalyst in my sports career that helped me become a better athlete and a better all around person. And I look back, that was a pivotal moment, because had he not said something, had I not taken action, the result doesn't happen. So I want everybody to think about that for a minute. There was a trigger, right? Someone said something to me and I could have responded either way. But on the other side of that was, how did I receive it?
Yeah.
And one of my biggest things is our values within our team and our family, as I say to my kids all the time, is the best thing you can be is coachable.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like
100%.
Listen to feedback, positive or negative, listen to it, because within both is some truth. Yes. And how you respond to it is actually the 90%. Like that stat, I actually do believe that. It's probably more than that. It's how you internalize it and then go take action. So that was my first one. And look, there's a lot of kids probably can relate, or people that listen to this and go, yeah, that was me. I was overweight, or I was skinny. I was on the other side of it and I wasn't healthy. And there's an opportunity for all of us at whatever age you are. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about fitness, and still to this day lead my family that way and show up as a leader, that I put that out there so people can see I'm putting in the work. I don't just talk about it.
Yeah. But you know what's interesting? It's another thing that you talk about, and I value so much, is that ownership. Like you took the responsibility. You knew it was yours. No one, I've said that to my own kids, no one is going to change this but you. And that's hard as a parent, but you're a little kid, right? So yeah, so no one's going to change this but me. Do you remember that feeling?
I do. Sitting in the doctor's office, I can remember it was off Exeter Road, and like the whole thing, like I can just, these are the memories we all have.
Yeah.
And what's cool about it is now I can pull from that. And when I have conversations with people, it does allow me to relate to them. Yes. And say like, here's where I was too. Like, yes, you might see me today where I am, but man, I was here, and I could have very easily taken the other route. And so I relate to what you're feeling. And one of my coaches I work with now shares this, is standards over feelings. Yes. It's helped me really write out, what are my standards? And I always think to that, it's kind of a positive trigger of, what are the standards? Well, I'm going to be a healthy father and a healthy leader, and I'm going to lead by example. Well, if I'm not feeling it today, which happens more than people will realize. Yes. Yesterday, I wasn't feeling it going into the workout. I saw it. I wasn't happy about it. I didn't like it. It's a lot of running. Well, my standard is, I'm going to be someone that takes care of my health for myself, for my family, and those that I care about. Well, when you start making decisions from that place, that's how you start to move forward and just start to stack days.
100%. And the thing about, you're describing this experience and then the outer outcomes, right? But you're a mindset guy, a guru mindset dude. And I'm thinking, in terms of the battlefield of the mind. So, right. So, huge. Yeah. So what have been like, can you still feel, or, I mean, I could go so many different directions, but what I'm thinking about with this is the battlefield of the mind, that child hearing those things. Children are wet cement. So it's like, you get this information about yourself, you make the decision, you take ownership, and then you do the action. Then you have your brain and your mind, your core beliefs underneath. I just want to know how you've overcome them, if it still pops up. I'm asking 3 questions at once. You're smart enough to follow, but like, I know you are. But it's kind of like, I want to know what your battlefield is now. Like, what pops up for you that you have to overcome? Because I know I have quite a few, so I'm just curious.
Yeah, a lot of different directions we could go. So let me attack it this way. I think it'll add the most value for people is, So if you go through and you can kind of follow that story. So I go through all this and I start doing the work. And probably just like everybody, like there's roadblocks that will come up and things that are there. But what will happen for each of you, you've kind of built that foundation stronger. So I knew there were lessons in that there were days that I could run faster and more than other days. So I knew I could do it. It wasn't a matter of if I could do it. It was starting to really shape up as a young age of, well, if I can do it, like what's stopping me from doing it? And it's me. And I started to develop some habits, which stick to me today. I'm still an early riser. I still go to bed early, right? Things that I started to develop in early age. The best gift I could give anyone, and my dad gave this, right? So we were talking about this kind of before, and he's a psychologist, right? And he's a sports psychologist, taught some things there, works with pastors, all these cool things. He taught me the power of visualization. And if anyone's not really dug into this, you should dig into it. I'm gonna give you my experience with it, how it helped me then and how I use it today, because I think it'll tie some of this together. Is we would sit before soccer games and even before we would leave to go to the games, and my dad would share with me basics, very, very basics of visualization, which was, hey, I want you to envision you making plays that you're going to make in the game. And I want you to envision you making them successfully, making that pass to your teammate, scoring a goal off of a cross and you head it in. If I was a goalkeeper, making a save that's going into the far post, coming out, collecting the ball. Like I'm visualizing this movie and I'm doing it all perfect. Because guess what? I get to. It's my movie. I'm writing the script.
Yes.
Here's what's powerful and why I believe the power of that today has given me, in many ways, an unfair advantage. When I go into the battlefield of work or relationships or battling my own kind of, issues of, do I go work out? Do I try to do this? Do I do anything in this world? That's where I can pull back and go, you know what? I can quiet the noise and I can go back to, before I go into this phone call with someone that's a difficult phone call, before I go speak with someone that's going to be a difficult conversation, before I go invest in another piece of real estate, in a way, it is visualizing, this is how it's going to work out. This is how I believe it's going to happen. And I believe in the power of that. And you align up. I'm a faith-based person. So I also believe, along with that, I'm praying for that as well. God, here's what I want to have happen. I want you to bless this in whatever way you want it to go, like help guide me through it. That power today, for many people, your gap exists because you can't see yourself as this better version of yourself yet. I want you to think about that. If you can see yourself as this fit, smart, intelligent, beautiful person that God created you to be, chances are you're going to be able to get to that person. But if you can't see yourself winning, having money, having successful relationships, I'll just tell you from my experience, when I had that gap and I knew it existed, I wasn't getting there.
100%.
It wasn't going to happen. And so that's a tool that will help you through, and kind of roundabout way to tell you, yeah, today, like I still battle the same thing probably most people battle. And mine has been, yes, I've had wins. Yes, I've had success in areas. But every time I get to that next level, I have the same doubts, the same, people call it imposter syndrome. I think it's just, it's nervous energy of like, I don't know what it is. Like the first time you make $100,000, first time you make $1 million, first time you start dating, first time you have kids, first time you open your own business, like whatever it is, you just aren't familiar with it yet. So if you would use the power of visualization to see yourself winning as that person, for me, I know that's been a tool that I don't like to play by chance. I don't play the lucks or the odds or any of that. I know I'm going to do the work. And over time, the work has paid off. And along the way, each of the failures and lessons has also given me something that's going to help me get the next win. Because if you haven't failed, you're not going to have the big wins, right? Like you have to take risks. Risks are going to have a higher probability of failure somewhere along the way. So if you can adapt your mindset and win that battle, sky's the limit. Like nobody can stop you.
This right here. So I want to talk about the visualization because I am all about that. I have not gained everything I've gotten in my life has been from being it before I was it.
Yep. So
like I tell people who work here, any job you want here, just do it. Be it. Be the person who gets the relationship. Like so many people are like waiting around for like the dream person, but they're not the person who would get that person. You got to be that first. But anyhow, right? But so I want to I wanted to touch on what you were saying, because I feel like I tell my kids, always be a novice, like, because that's the place of creation, right? So for you, like, I can hear that, you're in the state of creating, but when you get to the next level, because I relate to that so much, I'm there in my business, like, oh, I got to go to the next level. And I'm like, oh, we're just never going to make it. I can't drive this boat. I don't even know. I don't, because you don't know.
Yeah.
Because our brain, we haven't done it yet. There's no pathways in our brain for it. So that creative part, can you explain how you would create something you don't know?
So that's I'll tie it into what I've recently landed on and kind of changed some beliefs, and what I think through my experience has kind of taught me what's happening there. But I would start with this is, find people that are doing what you want to do at a higher level of success. Those can be mentors and coaches too, which I'll tie into. But there are people out there that are successful in whatever you want to be doing. It could be you want to open your own charity and you want to give back, and you've got, like, we did some work in Guatemala and building churches and all this stuff there. Well, guess what? Someone's doing it at a higher level than you today that you could learn from. And so my goal in this is, how do I find those people? That's who I surround myself with. All of my content feed, anybody that I'm going to consume content around, I very much am kind of curating that. Like, I do not allow people in that I believe will take me off my mission, hold me back, or in any way kind of be a distraction. And so find the people that are doing it at the highest levels that you align up with, right? That they have integrity and they're doing these things already. And what you can do from afar is you can kind of watch them. You can learn from them. And social media today, right? Like when we were coming up, and I think about high school, college, there were not the resources that exist today, where people, they give away stuff for free.
Yes.
Free.
Like you
Just
and
your
I.
Time. That's what it says. Like, I listen to these podcasts and I go, man, I'm literally giving you like 20 plus years in business, 20 plus years as an athlete, all these years and all this. And I'm taking lots of money invested, truthfully, to have mentors and coaches and to go to events. And so that would kind of land me on what I would say for someone today. I would pay for proximity. Meaning, when you go to a conference, I used to do this. I was the person that I'd pay for the cheapest spot, cheapest thing, and just to get in, if I would even go, right? Like, if I would go, I would buy the cheapest. Well, here's what I've realized. I wasn't betting on me. I was basically telling myself I wasn't worth it.
Yep.
And the first time, about 5 years ago, I'll never forget, it was a $10,000 ticket. Had to put it on my credit card because I didn't have the money to do it. And I'm like, holy crap, what are you doing, Brian? What are you doing? One of the absolute biggest breakthroughs, not even 10X, like more than 10X, the guys that I was around, and it was a married businessmen's retreat, right? That we went for several days. The things I learned, the relationships I built, and what I was able to turn that experience and knowledge into, I'd go invest that over and over and over. It's like saying, hey, you know what? Like, Alison, I'm going to give you $1. You're going to give me $10 back. Who wouldn't take that deal?
Exactly.
So that's the way you've got to think about investing in yourself and through this journey. So paying for proximity, I would tell you what I have found, and this is just my own rule of thumb I share with people, is you need to be investing at a minimum of 10% of what you're making back into yourself. When I have seen the biggest growth in my own life, I've actually been closer. I've measured this. It's closer to 20%.
Yes.
Just real numbers. No one ever taught me that.
Yes. I'll tell you something. I had the same experience. And because I would look at, I would go to conferences. I would go and glom everything, learn everything. But then I would see the VIP door and I'd be like, you know what? That's so snotty. And we're not the same. And I'd be like, have that offended attitude. And now, I've gone to 2 summits. I spend the money on being with people that I not only value, and it's not about being an opportunist. It's about connecting in an alignment with where I want to be in my life. Yes. And I would, and that has completely changed everything for me in my life. And what I want to tie in about you that is very interesting to me, because I heard something, it was a very short tweet that you were talking about, and I cried when I heard it. And you were talking about being the person, you don't have transactional relationships, which I agree with 100%. You're talking about the person behind the mortgage, and that, you know, you see them. And there's nothing that anybody on this earth wants more than that. Yeah. And I remember dealing with mortgage people, and always, and still, even it's a core belief, I still feel ashamed when they're going to look at my stuff, because I always feel like somehow I'm going to be rejected by the mortgage people. Yeah. It's just whatever. So, and ashamed, rejected and ashamed by the mortgage people. Yeah. So what I love about what you said, so now you're saying I pay for proximity, but then I hear you describing that you're sitting with a vet, or you're seeing them and you're hearing them. And I want you to, I know it's a funny question, but I'd love to hear you put them together, because they can be put together. So tell us, is it, I know he has no warning about these weird questions, but
I love it.
What do you feel about that?
Well, it's 100% that, right? And I tell people, some people will get this, they'll understand where I'm coming from, is like, when you pray for people in your life, right? Those that faith-based will understand this, as when you pray for people, you see them. Like that's how you connect, right? I think that's how, when I pray, at least there's visually, I can see them, and that's what I'm praying for. The same is true when you're visualizing something that you're doing, or you're going to help someone. Is imagine, you know, the past few years, we've done a lot of business, especially mortgages, refinancing, helping people buy homes. And many times we never see them, right? Mm-hmm. Like when they apply, we don't get a picture of them typically, unless we get an ID or we have to have it for the application, but we don't see them. What I would encourage everybody to do, what I try to do, is just listen. You know, I think very often we don't listen for their tone, their inflection. You said something really important, and I'll just share like the truth. Even when I go to get a mortgage, like we bought a couple properties and all that, I still, you know, invest in real estate. I still get nervous.
Yes.
They're pulling my credit. Guess what? I know my credit. I know my income. I know my assets. I still get nervous. So If you get nervous, welcome to the club. Yes. We all do. The person on the other side, you're going to know they care about you when they slow down up front. And what we encourage and train our team is get to know them, right? If they call you and they go, hey, what's your rate today? Say, hey, you know what? I would love to give you the best interest rate possible. Would you mind? I love to build relationships with my clients. Can we talk for just a few minutes and see if we're the right match for each other? Because to me, that's more important. And then I can help guide you through this process. Because if you want a rate, you can go online. There's computers that spit it out. But if you want a relationship and you want somebody to guide you, then chances are we're going to work really well together. You need to start with that in mind. Most people wing it in sales. They don't understand how to build rapport. They don't understand how to listen. And I usually just ask people a really simple question of, hey, tell me about why you're buying this house.
You know, I'll tell you that what you're describing, and this is what I'm thinking, is that you're visualizing, maybe not thinking about it, but you're knowing who you want to align yourself where you want to be, but you're also seeing them where they want to be, and hearing that. That's so right. It's like the two things. It's like, you know, that's what I do here when I would tell the other therapists, because I train them, like when a client comes in and they bring you all their problems, where they are today, that you have to see where they're going, not where they are. We're not staying there ever. This is an honor. Right. And I have to tell you, and I just have to tell you because it's a house story, and maybe you'll appreciate it. I had a client, and he was a heroin addict, and he got in recovery, and he's just great. And he ended up, having kids and a wife, but he just never believed he could buy a house. So he'd come in all the time and be like, I want to buy a house. And so I asked him to stop saying he wanted to buy a house and to start saying, I'm buying a house. I said, so buy a house. So he would walk out of the waiting room and he would pass the same girl, because they had an appointment at the same time. And he would say, hey, do you know what? I'm buying a house. And she'd be like, that's so great. Congratulations. And he started doing it every week. Do you know that he owns a house? A beautiful house. And he didn't believe it. He was still in that old mindset. I'm an addict. I suck, whatever, but he doesn't. So I just had to tell you, because you're the mortgage guy.
Well, so I'll piggyback a story onto this, and I won't say who it is, but I will say that on social media, if you were to see them, very successful, great profile, they're living their purpose. The way that they're impacting people in their lives, unbelievable. They're also a veteran. And they reached out because we connected on social. This is the power of social and things. I think how God will like ordain certain connections in certain times. He reached out. I don't know they're a homeowner or not a homeowner, right? Like that's just not something like I don't use it for that. I'm connecting with people. Reaches out, tells me, just like you said, so afraid, doesn't know if they're going to qualify, wants it for their kids and his wife and all this stuff. Tells me about the dreams. Man, I'd love to get this home, and this is what it'd mean to us and all that. You know how cool it is? Like we were able to connect up with one of our loan consultants, walk them through. The letter he said, I've saved it, would bring you to tears. And you think when you've had that experience, it's like that dopamine hit. You want more of it, but you realize you want more of it, not because of the commission, not because you did another deal.
Exactly.
The story that he shared, you go, holy cow.
Yeah.
I was able to impact generationally a family that owns a home, a veteran that has served our country, that deserves the absolute best. And we get to be part of that process. And they will think of us as the ones that guided them and helped them. Like, what is better than that? Like
nothing.
I remember buying my first home, scared as hell. We were in an apartment, didn't know if we'd afford it. And guess what? I worked in finance and I was still scared. So I just always connect that as like, I started there. And I think that's part of how you tie your purpose into life is now I see people that are afraid or scared or don't think they can do it. And just like you said, like you were empowering them and giving them, speak this into existence. Like I want to tell people like, here's what we're going to go do. I'm going to help you do this. Here's the steps. And it's like this team and there's nothing more fulfilling than that, right? Because you accomplish that goal together and that changes a family. I believe homeownership changes communities and families. And so
just
we're going to continue to advocate
confidence, you know, that, you know, every time you overcome that fear, you know, and I just, you know, I so much only want to hear from you, but this conversation makes me want to talk. So I gotta just say one more thing, but I kind of mentioned to you this idea that I'm just, I've been saying that I want to do this thing, you know, they think about like where you want to be in your life, your goals, you write your 10-year goals. But we forget that the blocks, the obstacles that we don't even know are in place. So I had a block of, I had to have a certain amount of money to do this, whatever, this 10-year goal. And I felt like God just came to me and said, do it now. And I was like, yes, do it where you stand. And I did. And I have to be honest, I'm going to tell you, Brian, that day I was very, very dark and depressed. And I walk on this walk regularly with my dogs every morning, and I pass a particular house, and there's sadness there. So I felt that I wanted to do something to give love. It doesn't matter. I'm not even going to give the details, but and I was very dark. So the reason I'm telling you this is because it's about this thing that you talk about when you become aligned with your purpose, the energy that comes. So in that dark time, I left. I didn't do what I said I thought I wanted to do. I went home. I was trying to make my dog go back. My dog wouldn't go back to the house, wouldn't. And I'm like, that's weird. I went home. I couldn't rest. I had to go back. I just jumped in the car, drove around to these people's house who I don't know. It was the most scariest, embarrassing moment of my life. I'm telling you, I did not want to do it in any way, but I just put my head, heart, feet, God at the top. He told me to do something. I'm like, I am so depressed. I'm just going to go do it because I had nothing to lose. The day was horrible for me anyhow. And that's the truth. So I went and did that thing. I got outside of myself. I had wells of tears in my eyes when I was talking to them, but I don't want to say what I did, but I know I changed their life. And it had nothing to do with money. It only had to do with love. I didn't need money to do that day. And since that day, because I was in a depression, since that day, I felt like I found my home. And I feel better. I'm like happy now. So I'm just, it's a very emotional thing I'm sharing on this podcast. I always do things like this, but I feel like when I saw on your thing that when you find your purpose, I have it written here, you align that's when the energy of God like comes. And that's what you said. And I felt like it was, we were aligned that I talked to you today. This just happened. Was it yesterday?
Wow.
Might've been yesterday. And,
Wow.
yeah. And I've been struggling. And then I see this, I'm like, and I started crying. I'm like, wow, that's like so powerful. So I really didn't want to talk the whole time about me. So could you speak on that? And I want to be respectful of your time too. I know we're going to run out of time. So that is so powerful what you said.
I love your story. And I think your story just really should solidify for people is you'll have this urge or you'll have this like thought or something. And I always encourage you to take action on it, because think about it this way is I always think of like, what's the worst that could happen? I do something nice. I serve somebody. I take a risk on something. It doesn't work out. Chances are you're probably not taking a risk that's going to kill you, right? Like that's the worst case scenario, that you go do something. But for many of us, we have these urges and these situations in our life and we don't take action. And that's where the regrets build up, right? Like we know we should have done this. We didn't do it. But we should all just hold fast to this truth. Like you can't go back, right? You can't go back and change. And somebody posted something on social this week and they were like, hey, would you go through the red door, which would allow you to go back 10 years in your life? Or would you go through the blue door, which would give you, $10 million instantly today? Without hesitation, I said, I take the blue door. I take the money, because everything that's gotten to me to where I am today, I know what to do with that money and the lives to impact and where to invest it and how to make things happen. That no, I don't want to go back, because the last 10 years has taught me more than I could ever hope or dream of. And I believe God's put you right where you are today to do something big.
Yeah.
And so take whatever opportunities there, take the urge, take the risk. That's where you took action. And for many of us, that's the difference. And so I'd say, just do it. Shout out to my wife. I got to tell this story will tie into like what you were sharing. She has this like unique way. We're flying back. We had our 20-year anniversary last weekend and we're going out to the plane, walking out there. And one of the flights, I guess they work for the airline and all this. I don't even know what their position is, right? But she looks at her and she goes, man, your hair looks beautiful today. That's it. The smile on this lady's face. Alison, let me just tell you, she lit up like, this stranger just told me my hair looks beautiful today. And she'll do that all the time. Like, oh my gosh, I love those shoes. Or oh, your earrings look great. You look great today. Guys, you don't need a lot of money to make a lot of impact. We always think that, God, I believe this, will give you more as you start to be faithful in the small things. When you start to do these things, like today, who in your life can you just make a little compliment to and make them feel heard, seen, appreciated, all of that? That to me blew me away, because she's way better at that. I don't do that well. Like that's just, I don't see that stuff. Like that's not my jam, but I'm starting to see that now. So again, paying for proximity, being around great people. This is how you learn these things in action, and then you go do them.
It's interesting. So that's what she sees. And I believe that I teach my daughter that, like, when you see something, it's my tattoo, be beauty, see beauty, see beauty, say it. Right. And it's like, so I now have to meet your wife, but anyhow, so it's just like, I feel like the things that you're describing, where we stand, I always say if you're building a mountain, the first scoop of dirt is just as powerful as the one at the very top. Like, what's the difference? And I think, Joyce Meyer says, you have to step out to find out. Every time I've ever done a little thing, say the first word that God wants me to say to a person, then I have a whole thing to say. And that's what happened with these people. I said one thing that I knew he wanted them to know, that there's great things for you in your future. I see that. And there's hope and you're loved. And just like, then everything came out. And you see tears in their eyes, and you could see that they wanted it, and they needed hope that day. Yeah. Right. So like and I needed hope that day, but I got it by giving it.
That's right.
Right. So it's like, so anybody here who's listening, you want to find, in the way that I found my identity, my purpose. And I want to ask you about that too. Because one of the ways I did that was I would ask myself, if I have everything that I want today, no matter what, everything, money, everything, now what? When I wake up in the morning, what would I want to do? And I knew that I wanted to get up and find somebody to change their life for the better. I knew that if I could do that, I would be happy the rest of my life. But I thought money was the way. So now for you, and I had to it took me years to find that answer. So for you, like, what do you know what your purpose is?
Yeah, I think over years, and this is just my belief on it, right? So I know some people may view it differently, but I think it can change in the sense of the specificity of it.
Yes.
And I think I look back to even in high school, I was nominated to be the captain of the soccer team, and I wasn't a great leader. Honestly, I was one of the better players. That's probably why I got picked. But that was put in me early of, wow, being a leader comes with responsibility. And so then I stepped into that role before I was really ready for it. And I started to see myself as other people saw me. Same thing in college, went through junior, senior year. And I started to see things in myself, and I started to recognize these clues that I think God will leave if you pay attention to them. And I look back to even, my story of being overweight and battling that. Like, how would I have known fitness today would tie into what we're going through as a leader of an organization, and why I believe and talk to our team about how fitness is important and your mental health is important. And I started just pulling all these things in together, and finding your uniqueness is really slowing down, looking back at what are the clues? What do people ask you about? What do people come to you for advice? To your point, what are you passionate about? What if everything was gone tomorrow? What would you start over and go do first? And I think those are the hard questions that for a lot of us, you've got to slow down. And so I believe I'm on that journey, and I show up every day to serve where I am. And one of my coaches says this all the time, but be where your feet are. Be where your feet are. And I think about that a lot. And it's like, where am I today? Who can I serve today in this conversation? And then I'll move to the next thing. And so I don't try to make this some big thing. A lot of times it gets overwhelming, quite honestly. And my journey of that is like, you got overwhelmed. Like, well, who was I created to be? What's my purpose? And like all this. No, my purpose is to show up today and be the best version of Brian. Everybody I talk to, everybody I get a chance to be with, can I leave them better than they were before they saw me today or met me? Can I make them feel good about themselves? Can I speak truth into their life? Can I add value into their life by sharing something that I believe for them is going to help them? Or like, how can I do that? Like, simple example, showed up for a workout this morning, encouraging people around us, right? We're having conversations. We sit out afterwards and we're talking. Like, be where your feet are. You miss out on these moments, and your purpose will start to come alive. And that's when your energy gets high. Like, I get super excited after workouts with the guys. Like, it's the same thing as being a leader and a dad and all of that. Like, I get energy from those activities, and I know where I don't get energy, right? There's things that I will not do, won't do. I don't get involved in the gossip. I don't hang out a lot in people that want to just talk down or negatively about things. And there's just things that I don't want to participate. I don't go to the bars. I don't go out drinking. I don't stay out late. I don't do all that stuff. That doesn't align up with my purpose and who I am and who I want to be. And so I would say, as you go through it, pay attention to those clues and ask yourself the questions. And then as you start to live that life, I think the clarity starts to become even better for you. And you start to realize, wow, this is why I'm here. I'll give you a great example this morning too of real life. So I like to give people like real life things. So I send a text out to our group. Typically every morning I'll send out something either encouraging, motivational, something going on with the market, right? Recognition about something going on. And I sent out one of the quotes here, and I'll see if I can pull it up, because it was pretty profound of what was sent back to me. And I thought, holy cow, I shared this. And it was from Andy Frisella, by the way. It said, when you feel like things aren't going your way, that's the time when you need to lock in and control what you can control. It's the basics, what you eat, what you drink, your exercise, who you interact with, what you put in your brain. These are the things that no matter how bad things are, you are ultimately in control of.
Love that.
I had no idea. It landed with one of our team members. Won't go into the details, but they responded to me like, Brian, I felt like you absolutely spoke to me with sharing that. I don't know who said that. I don't know this Andy guy, right? Like, wow. That's the power of sharing what you're experiencing with other people. That's how I choose to show up and live my purpose.
Brian, I think we have the same purpose, but anyhow, I mean, obviously it's different, but that really is powerful. I'm always thinking that, we want to keep our head, heart, and feet in the same spot. We're saying so many of the same things. And I feel like, don't you feel like when we're in the now, and all I kept hearing and seeing when you were talking is like, you're a role model. Your life is a role model. Like your life, Brian, is like a testimony. That's what I feel like, that's what you are. When I was looking at your stuff, and then just how you take each moment and create something. The room is better because you're in it. I always ask people that, like, when you walk in the room, is it better because you're there? And I hope that you know that, so I feel like for you, like, you are definitely, you're like, as a leader, like, just your life makes you a leader. Don't you think?
I do. I'll tell you, if you hang out with me long enough, you're going to realize that this is a word, again, shared from my pastor friends. And I've kind of adopted that. So you'll hear like a lot of things that I share, things that I've learned through being around great people. And then I've learned through experience that I know to be truth and what I believe in. Talks about being perfectly flawed. If you hang around me long enough to know, you're going to realize that I have my own flaws, short temper. I get mad at certain things. I have a little bit of that perfection. I want things to be a certain way and all this stuff there. And so anybody that's listening, you're like, wow, Brian does all these cool things and all that. Yeah. And I still battle with things as well every day, but I'm aware of them.
Yep.
And I recognize them before they hopefully get to be to a point where it can damage myself, people that I care about. And then when they do go off track, how quickly can you course correct, right? Can you recognize those? So I just share that as like, being perfectly flawed is like, God's gotten you to this point. You're here for a reason. The successes and failures go hand in hand. That's what makes you who you are.
And I feel like just you saying that is the role model. Because if you were just like, any of us are just like perfect, then no one can connect, right?
No.
I mean, when I hear that, a driven person, right, is probably going to have some level of anxiety and some level of like, oh my God, the ship's gonna crash. What am I gonna do? I mean, like, and then I'm like, oh my God, I have to talk your own self off a ledge. Like, I have to do that. So I'm imagining that we probably have to land this plane, and I'm really bad at landing planes. But first of all, I want to tell people about your book.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a copy of any, like, is it there? Or, there we go. I'm getting it. Conversations with Covey right there. So can you let's do like a plug. I know that you've taken some of your guests and
oh yeah.
So what is this? What are we going to get from this book, Brian?
So the design of this is wherever you are in your life, we're all at different stages, different age could be part of that as well. But you're at a point in your life where you probably want to break through. And we created this book for people that want to break through in their life, and they want to be able to create their best life. And they're not really sure how. What's the next step? How did they do it? How did this person get there? And we took some of the absolute best guests, 11 of them, and I included my story in there as well. And they all have hit some type of adversity, some type of huge setback in their life, personally, financially, business, all these things. One of our guests I'll just share with you overcame cancer, which has come back in my life with friends, and I've had them read their book and connect them with one of our speakers there. And wherever you are, the reality is, I believe God has something bigger planned for you. That's why you're here, right? Because if you didn't have more planned and intended, you'd be gone, right? That's how I believe that. So this book will help you take that next step and be inspired by people that have been where you are and have found the keys for them. I say it's like unlocking a combination, and they'll share actionable, like tactical ways. Here's where I started. Here's what I did next. Here's what I did after that. And what I love is you're going to connect with the people, their stories. And we basically took conversations and put them in written format. So you could read one of the stories. You could read 4 or 5 or all of them at once. They could be a great gift for somebody that's going through something or that really is highly competitive like we are. And they just want to create a breakthrough in their life. And I think you can create that win in your life no matter where you are. You can create that next win to get to where you want to go.
That's fantastic. And can people find that anywhere? Amazon, or would they?
Amazon's the best one. Yeah. You can go to my website. You can find that. We'll put the links there, but yeah, go there. And it's been an amazing journey. It wasn't really something I ever thought I would do. And then through, some of the pandemic, all that stuff going on, I thought, man, people need hope. They need real stories, like real people, not this news, not even the social media, like
Yeah.
they need real stories, real people. And not everybody consumes like audio, right? Podcasts. So I thought, why don't we just take these, put them in a written format? And it's been something really powerful and cool, even in my own life, of the relationships built, the connections made. I mean, if I were to tell you, Alison, you would, if you go through and you see who's in there, some of the speakers now, and I'll just give a shout out. Dave Meltzer was one of them. And I got to finally meet Dave this January because everything was kind of, we weren't in the same spots. And getting to meet somebody and the blessing he's been in my life, teaching me about gratitude and his lessons, like I'm a better man and father and leader because of that guy.
Yes.
Like I didn't have to meet him until this year. And that was what a blessing. Like we met, our energy, it was just,
I love
so thankful.
him.
Yeah.
I love him. They offered me a spot for individual coaching with him. So I think I should.
He's the real dude. He's got a cool story. I'll put the plug of, you see him where he is, but if you listen to him, you'll find somebody very similar to what we've talked about today that you'll be able to relate to.
Yeah. He's an amazing man. Your podcast, can you tell everybody about it? It's a great podcast. I've listened.
Oh, it's been crazy. We started it, January, and it originally, the first few versions were in person before everything in March, 2020 went remote. What was cool though, again, this is how you turn a setback into a setup for you, is then I said, well, who can I invite on? Who are the bigger guests, the people that I've always dreamed of, that maybe they're at home because they're not traveling and speaking, or they're not as busy as they used to be. So we built it out. We bring people on that you can relate to. A lot of them are former athletes and pro athletes. That's kind of my jam. A lot of people with faith-based, a lot of people that you would just relate to their story of being a mother or father, or it's just the stories I always say is like, that's what hooks me. I want to know their story. And then the real value is truly, what are they doing today? What can they share with the audience that could listen and go, this is how, for example, I could invest in my first real estate property. Simple.
Oh, yeah.
Or this is how I would go start my podcast. Like basic stuff that a lot of people want to know. We break it down in simple terms and we just map it out for you. So a little bit of hope, inspiration, motivation, all that stuff. But then we get into the meat and potatoes of, okay, here's the action steps you can go do.
Oh, I love it. That is so cool. So where can everybody find you? Is it at your website? Is that everything they would find of you there?
Could be there. You can start Instagram. We're pretty active there. And it's
what's the name of the, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, it's the whole at the Brian Covey thing, because it's like somebody took my name. Then if you go to the website, it's just www.briancovey.com.
Okay, www.briancovey.com, right? I've seen it. Yeah.
Yep. You find the book, podcast, all of it.
What would you say before I let you leave? What would you say is, if you had to give somebody without hope today one thing that you really believe would turn around their life, what would it be?
The one that comes to mind that I've probably resonated on in like the dark seasons, like when things get tough and like not going your way, is love God and love people. It's pretty hard to, it's hard to feel bad about yourself when you intentionally, and love is a verb. And so when you love God and you do things there, and you're reading your Bible, or you're reading scripture, you're going through and like just learning about, why we were created. And then if you take that into action now and you go out and you love people and you serve at a local charity, or, even like your kids' sports and like volunteer, or just like do stuff at your school. Like if you do those two things, you're probably going to find out your problems aren't as big as you thought they were. And it's a lot going on up here, and you can take action to create a better way of feeling. And that's what I would love God and love people. It's that simple.
I love that. I used to say every day, now I'm going to start saying it again. How can I best be of service to God and man today?
Yeah.
And it's a great way to start the day, because then it's like, it's really, when you're adding value, you're getting value. It's just the way it is, right? So, Brian, I am so thankful to you for you being here. You're a man among men, really. And I just want to shout out also, because I can't land a plane, is that Brian, just as a family man, as a dad, and we didn't get into that, and as a husband, that, he's always raised, you see people who are successful in their life, and that area, very often it's like missing a pillar in family and marriage. You see people like abandon their families, right? Because it's hard to do everything. And I just see Brian as somebody who is really contributing to the growth and the ongoing health of his family as an ongoing life practice. So I just want to honor you you have a beautiful family, and I love that you share them with us, and you're the guy to follow. You're a great role model, and I think that you were made for that. I mean, I do. I think that.
Sharing the journey, because I think it helps others to see all that stuff that goes on, and my quirkiness and weirdness and all the stuff. Like you'll get all of that, and then you'll get some wisdom thrown in there too.
That is wisdom, Goofy. I'm like the queen of goof. All right. So Brian, thank you for being here. It's just been an honor to have you. You're a wonderful guest.
Thank you.
Thank you.